So why we are focusing on Christians, as Noura said, it's part of Malteser operation that we had a quantitative study, and there was a significant number of Christians, Yazidis, and Shebeks that showed, or Kakai, sorry, that showed there was a significant number of people not returning or returning. And for us, in terms of logistics, the impact of COVID and accessibilities, we chose the Christian community because we thought that we will have at least access for the language and also for the internet access, because a lot of Yazidis still living in camps, but also there is a sensitivity for Yazidis. For me personally, I'm from Iraq, and I was worried that there would be a sensitivity after what had happened to the Yazidis. Genocide done by ISIS, which is labeled as Muslims. Next. So my research question discusses the displaced Christians, why the reasons of displaced Christians for not return to Nineveh Plain according to 3 interrelated facets: mistrust in state and local system of governance and protection. So what is actually going on the ground? Who is protecting what? Who are the security actors there? And who are the people that providing the protection and also the remedy? So Noura mentioned the church system and the LRC that was elaborated by Mona. And the second facet is the insufficient remedy and the welfare system. And by remedy here, I mean not only the material compensation, but also people feel like their dignity is stolen, and they were humiliated. And there are so many things that goes around it that cause them so much pain that they don't want to return in Nineveh Plain. And finally, the migration dynamics and other economic disincentives and incentives. So why migration is actually very unique to the Christian communities in Iraq, and how the actors of migration had incentives on the Christian communities. This I will elaborate on it later. Next, please. So with the methodology, I conducted semi-structured interview with 19 people, and I had 2 follow-up interviews. So that's why you see 21 interviews. And I had 2 sets of questions and 2 sets of groups. The first group is the activists, people in power, people who don't care, they can talk and are actually being activists on the matter of Christians. And the other group is the non-returnees, which I kept their identity confidential. And I took part of the non-returnees from Malteser program, and the other part is outside of Malteser program, because I wanted to see if there is like some biases within my Malteser program. Because, for example, if someone contracted with Malteser to have their house reconstructed and then they decide not to return, then maybe culture-wise or the circumstances did not allow them to go back, and they're shy to say what is the actual reason. And in order not to have those individual reasons influenced, I took the other groups which are not part of Malteser program. And eventually I conducted the interviews and had them transcribed and transferred to Max QDA and used the grounded theory approach. I found by reading so many times 10 main categories, and then further dividing them into 42 categories, codes, themes, and subcategories that are actually the reasons for non-return. And then I saw what is in the literature, then I excluded what is written in the literature and focused on the new findings that occurred in the interviews. However, we cannot hide the fact of, for example, security and protection is just all over the literature, the reports of the NGOs, and also it's in my data, was showing also in my data. Next. So before explaining the preliminary findings, it's important to understand the non-returnees categories I took in this paper. The first category, I have three main categories. The first one is the displaced Christians that are still residing in camps in Kurdistan region of Iraq or in Iraq in general, who are undergoing the process of voluntary return. Why the voluntary is quoted here, because I think, some people argue that the return is not actually voluntary, because we cannot compare the person who's living in a camp the same as the ones who are living in housing with proper facilities in Kurdistan region. And the second category is the displaced Christians residing in Kurdistan region and other areas of Iraq who have found a level of integration through jobs, schools, medical care, etc. And the third one is migrants Christians either residing in transit countries waiting for their asylum approval inside Iraq or already settled as asylum seekers abroad. So for my sample, I targeted women, men, mostly men. Culture-wise, it's hard to have women speaking. And also I had people living outside the Nineveh plain, and also people living abroad outside of Iraq in Jordan. And also the activists I interviewed, or the main actors, I interviewed them operating or living in Nineveh plain. Next. The current literature explains the reasons for non-returnees, especially the Christians, are political reasons, and also the multiple security forces that are overlapping with the political affiliation, and the division of the Christian political identity. As Mona said earlier, that the Christians have 14 denominations and 12 political parties, and they're all disputed, and there is division among themselves, and affiliation with Kurdistan region and with the Iraqi government. And there's also internal disputes, including that Nineveh plain is a disputed territory. And that doesn't help. It's a foreign space where it's true that it was mentioned by Muna that this foreign space, Nineveh plain is diverse, but why is it the most diverse place is because they're just isolated in their own zone, because they have faced discrimination all over the years from different areas from Iraq. Next, please. So the preliminary findings, people do not return because they feel they have stolen dignity and they do not trust the process of remedy. This was covered through nepotism, but also who are the actors that are controlling the remedy process in Nineveh plain. I will explain this further next. And the role of religion and religious actors, how did they influence or did not influence the return? The mistrust in the state and the local system, this is a big deal, and I will explain it further. Political agenda and beyond, and then immigration incentives and others like economic challenges, unemployment, lack of opportunities, no social security, and social environment that had changed. Next. So key points on the findings: mistrust and fear. How relevant Daesh ideology is. We need to remember there is a huge difference between Islam extremism and Muslims and the discourse around it. But we cannot forget that ISIS claimed that they are Muslims, and they're referencing all their actions through Quran, and for that, for the Christians to go back, now I will explain how demographic change, and there are more Muslims and Shebeks in the area. For Christians, we need to remember, first, they had moved to Nineveh Plain. A lot of my non-returnees are not actually from Nineveh Plain. They moved there in the past few decades because in the south and in the middle of Iraq, they had faced discrimination and they felt unsafe. So that area was the safe zone for them. When they arrived there, and we need to remember to bring the fact that in Iraq, the religions are not taught to each other. There is only the Muslim majorities that go to school, learn about Islam, and they don't know anything about Christianity and other religions, except few attempts that came out recently by Masarat and Saad Saloum, for example, when they tried to introduce the religions to others. But the reality is, for some, even the education system does not teach any other religion except Islam. And even if Islam acknowledges Christianity, the Christianity is only taught through the Islam lens. So there's like the bubble of not associating with each other. And okay, sure, the Muslims understand Christianity, but do Christians understand Islam? As someone from Iraq, when I grew up there and had my classes, my Islamic classes, the Christians were always asked to leave the classroom because they don't need to learn about Islam because they're Christians. But do they actually know what Islam is? The only thing they know about Islam is how Muslims treated them, whether by extremists like ISIS or whether by anyone else inside Iraq. So this is what I mean by lack of sharing and lack of understanding about other religions. And for them to think about going back and relive this moment is really is unimaginable, as one of the non-returnees said. The other issue is the ISIS families. Now, what the government did, and actually did not do, is to deal with ISIS families inside Nineveh Plain. When ISIS fighters were captured, killed, arrested, they had families, and what the government did, they just isolated them in camps. And those camps are very close to Tel Kef, which are towns within Nineveh Plain. And for Christians, this is like a bomb that will explode at any minute. And this is really fear. It constitutes a huge fear, and it's crucial for them that this issue needs to be solved. Why those families are kept in such isolated areas, and why no one is doing anything about it. Just yesterday, I was watching an interview with the ISIS children, which is like the families of ISIS in those camps. And they didn't let the woman to enter because she wasn't wearing hijab. And they told her, and she said, what if I don't wear it? And they told her, we would kill you. And those were kids. And we can imagine in the future what they could become if the situation left as it is. And I mean, history teaches us a lot about those. The head of ISIS was also someone who was abused and in prisons and also brainwashed. Anyway, I will not go into that. I explained the ideology, families, and religion, what ISIS constitute what ISIS and what actually changed in Nineveh Plain, and what does this constitute for Christians that do not decide to return. I just wanted to quote this, and one of my interviewees said, Muslims were the reasons for the displacement in Mosul to Nineveh Plain. Even before Daesh, some mosques, not all of them, used to say, Muslims, do not buy Christians home. One day you will take them for free. What happened to us in Nineveh Plain made us cautious or apprehensive. So this is just to explain that this is what Islam and Muslim mean for some of the Christians, and between choosing whether they leave or stay, and with such situation, of course, the staying away is the easiest choice, although it's not really easy. And case 3 said, just to follow up on that, he said there are campaigns by young people under auspices of clerics and sheikhs to clean churches and prepare them for the return. We value those actions, but we cannot trust them. There's a strong obsession to think about living Muslims who kill Christian communities. So the sharing of the understanding, the labeling of Muslims that is relevant to ISIS, and also the neglection of the government for those communities inside Nainawa Plain, and also not providing them protection even in Mosul, which made them move to Nainawa Plain in the first place. Next. So the role of the religion and religious actors. In Nainawa Plain, according to Nainawa Reconstruction Committee, they say in Nainawa Plain, the voice and the role of the local church leaders is stronger than in other regions of Iraq, which is true. And considering, I mean, they provided a lot of sum. I checked based on the recent data that only for housing, they had provided 250 million. So I'm just stating those facts in the beginning, just to say that they had a role. It was great that they supported, and but it's not enough, and there's no trust. Whether they influence the return or non-return, not really. Christians, maybe church leaders maybe supported the returnees, but whether to decide to return or not, there was a lot of debate around it. And for example, case 3 said frustration with how the church handles the situation. Their role is negative and they failed. There are sects within Christians do not consider the opinion of a cleric or another sect. So the division among Christians made those non-returnees to think again, is their voice legitimate for us to trust them and go back? And did they actually say that we would provide protection and therefore you can come back or not? So no one, according to the respondents, no church leader said, okay, come back and we will protect you. It's always that come back and we will support you. But to provide protection, to guarantee that, I think no one can guarantee that in Iraq. And some of them said there is a politicized role, the fact that clerics adopt one party's agenda over another according to his sect's this fact put them into suspicion. So in this case, I think was it Muna who said, okay, the church leaders are the most trusted, or the LRC are the most trusted actors in Nainawa Plain. It's true, but it's relative. It's most respected and most trusted, but it's not trusted enough, because unfortunately, or maybe it's important for those church leaders to take a political action to support specific political parties so that they gain protection, which is not really the role of the religious leader in general, to be political. Case 2 said, currently the rule of the Christian community is under sectarian rule, and in full sense of the word, we are confused. And in addition to that, there is the corruption side and the nepotism, which was already addressed. This is not to say that this is within the operation of any organization, as Stefan clarified the role of Malteser to tackle those issues of nepotism and corruption. But in the overall situation, there is a lot of corruption. I remember one of the non-returnees told me, how come the church leaders are now wearing, driving the most recent cars? And when I said this to another non-returnee who was defending the church leaders, he said, okay, but we have this quote in Arabic, if we get 60% of the fund, we thank them, that's good. So even the one who defends them understand that there is corruption within the system. And we need to remember that Iraq lacks the institution, and ISIS invasion is a huge shock to the system anyway. So of course we can expect corruption within this region for that purpose. Next. The political agenda and beyond, the instability. I will not explain deeper here because Saad Saloom covered this in his latest paper with IOM about the barriers of non-returns, and he explained the political affiliation of Christians and how Baghdad and the Kurdistan government are taking advantage of the situation, and how the disputed territory is taking a specific factor for the Christians to be unstable. And for example, it's true, if you ask many Christians, Kurdistan region is more stable. And if you ask them, I mean, I asked my non-returnees that they would prefer to be part of Kurdistan region in their disputed territory. But when we come to reality, is that jobs, budgets, operations is all funded by the government of Iraq, and government of Iraq provides Kurdistan region with the 13% or between 13 or 17%. It's debated until now. So at the end of the day, they actually need the Baghdad government for that. So even the Christians themselves are disputed between what they actually want and what is reality is. Next. And here I would like to explain about the immigration incentives. There are three main influencing actors on immigration. What makes Christian immigration unique to any immigration in Iraq is that Christians have their families, the ties, the image of home abroad. There's a whole new concept of religion that is abroad, of their families and communities abroad, and they want to be part of it just by taking the chance. And also the fact that the demographic change that happened in Nineveh Plain, and a lot of them say, okay, I go back to my house and my neighbor is not the same. They're not Christians, they're other communities. Why not just go abroad and visit my, and be with my family? And the other factor is the states. For example, the states offered facilitation and influence the immigration of Christians. We don't see when I don't know if all of you have heard about the explosion of Najat Church in 2010, which is what the Pope visited when he went to Iraq. There were so many Christians that were killed, tens of them. And once this incident happened, France opened the immigration for Christians specifically. And at the same time, there were so many explosions in mosques, and no one cared about Muslims who were dying in the mosques during that time. So just by giving this facility to the Christian, this influenced their existence in Iraq. The other side is like, even not only the Christians, when the genocide of the Yazidis happened, Germany opened its door for Yazidi survivors, which is great. But what about the other survivors? What about the Muslim survivors? It's much harder for them to leave. And as we know, a lot of them came across the sea. They couldn't come as a proper immigrant or legal one, or, they had to suffer in different ways. And finally, it's the third actor, which is the problem, is the Iraqi government that failed to protect and compensate the Christian communities. And of course, this does not only cover the Nineveh Plain issue, but also until now, there are territories in Baghdad that are taken by the government or by Muslims or Islamist groups that are not given back to, that belong to Christians, and they are still not given back to Christians. The second aspect here when it comes to immigration and demographic change is the social aspect of life. As I said, there was a lot of concerns that people go back and they think their neighbors changed, their community changed, so they don't feel safe. They say, we don't have anyone there. And we intend to see a lot of issues about demographic change of Shebeks as ethnic Muslim groups, but also Muslims, even with intention or without intention. A lot of Muslims were displaced from Nineveh, from Mosul to somewhere in Tel Kif, and as Noura said, they started to do their tradition, which is raising the flag of Hussein, which belongs to Shia, and this is concerning for Christians. As I said, it's like we run away from those traditions in this foreign space, so we are protected and we know each other, and now they're after us again, so the immigration is the easiest way out. And then there are economic opportunities abroad that could be better. We have the post-Daesh situation, which, as you may be aware of, that there are so many problems with the construction and economic situation, and also the impact of COVID. And Iraq relies on the oil prices, and all of that had dropped. And is there actually an opportunity to rebuild the Nineveh Plain properly, not only housing, but also businesses and connections and protection that needed to sustain those economic activities? So it's not enough. Next. For further leads for future research, the Constitution protects the minorities' rights, whether when it comes to minorities, land ownership, or when it comes to acknowledging the Christian communities, at least in the Constitution. There was a question about the ownership and land and whether it's okay to sell or not. In reality, it is a lot of properties are sold to people in Nineveh Plain, regardless of their religion or ethnicity. But the Constitution protect those rights, but the legislation, we have lack of legislation. The problem in Iraq is the lack of legislation that does not match the Constitution. And the other problem is that although the Constitution protects all the rights, Article 2 of the Constitution says that the Constitution and legislations in Iraq follow the Islamic Sharia. So it's very debatable, and it's very hard to right to achieve, especially that if anyone in the parliament would like to propose, any Christian in the parliament would like to propose a law, the quota for Christians in the parliament is just 5 seats out of more than 200. So you can see that how hard it is to pass a law. And also because of the division, it's even harder because of the division among the Christian communities. And also further leads to other researches, human rights and violation against Christians. I just tackled quickly the land ownership in Baghdad and other community and other areas in Iraq. And the identity versus land, which is what Noura is partially covered. Next, please. So for now, I'm finalizing the findings. I look forward to your comments and contribution to this. We haven't done the policy and recommendations. This will come after the finalizing the findings and the conclusion. Specific challenges for me personally is that I was talking to people who did not return, and they had mistrust and fear of talking to me as someone who's Iraqi and part of the majority group. So it's I had to explain to them the neutrality and independence of this research. And also a lot of challenges, which was the COVID situation and remote interviews. But I managed to interview the Minister of Migration, and it was really fruitful. Next. So thank you all for your attention. We will discuss now. The floor is open for your comments and questions. I just want to highlight that whatever I said about the mosque announcing against Christians and Christians, church leaders being corrupted and all that does not represent my opinion. It represents the findings, and I'm completely neutral in this process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. So now we have 25 minutes left for discussion, and please, if you want to ask a question, use your hand, which you can access through the reactions. I am not able to read the chat also to see who wants to ask a question. Yeah, so the floor is open for asking questions, and as you know, there's translation, so you can ask your question also in Arabic and it will be translated simultaneously.
Wow, I did a great job.
Aida Ahmed is raising her hand.
Okay.
مرحبا. أعيد أكرر يعني أشكر طبعا كل الجهود الدولية والإقليمية لمساعدة العراق ولحل أزمة التنمية الموجودة. طبعا من ضمن أسعدني أنه سمعت الكثير من الأسباب الحقيقية وراء النزوح والهجرة أو عدم عودة النازحين، أو أحب أؤكد على العامل الاقتصادي والعامل السياسي. يعني يجب أن يأخذ اهتمام أكبر داخل البحث. وأحب هي ليست مسألة دفاع عن أفكار وأيديولوجيات دينية، لكنه الشعب العراقي شعب متصالح، لا فرق بين مسيحي ومسلم، نعيش منذ آلاف السنين، والمسيحيون هذا وطنهم وأرضهم في العراق. لكن يبدو أن الأجندات السياسية وبعض المخططات الخارجية المقصودة لإجراء التغيير الديموغرافي في المنطقة هو السبب. فأسأل الزميلة الأخت آخر المتحدثات، لأنه النت كان ضعيف ما سمعت اسمها، حول طرحت قضية أنه داعش مسألة وجودهم كانت بضع يعني سنوات قليلة وتم التحرير. ألا تعتقدين أنه أحد الأسباب يمنعهم من العودة أنه لم تعلن الحكومة التحرير الكامل والشامل لكل الأراضي العراقية، أو وكذلك حتى القوات الأجنبية الموجودة؟ دائما نسمع بالأخبار قامت داعش بعمليات تفجير بعض القرى أو قتل بعض الشرطة والأمن إلى آخره. هذا أحد الأسباب لم تطمئن الحكومة أو حتى القوات التحالف الموجودة في العراق الشعب بالمجتمع العراقي بخلاصه من داعش. هاي نقطة. النقطة الثانية، الأسباب اللي ذكرتيها حول البطالة والفقر، دائما الناس المسيحيين متطلعين كباقي أفراد الشعب العراقي إلى التطور، إلى الحضارة، إلى الخدمات الجيدة في المدارس، في البنى التحتية، في الكهرباء. لقد يعني تعب الشعب العراقي وتعبوا العراقيين سواء مسيح أو شبك أو كل أنواع الأديان الموجودة عندنا، حتى اليهود الموجودين عندنا في العراق، من انعدام الوضع الاستقرار الأمني والسياسي والخدمي. فجاء داعش لتقسم نقول قشة التي قسمت ظهر البعير. فإذا العامل السياسي هل تم أخذه بنظر الاعتبار؟ الميليشيات المسلحة المنفلتة خارج القانون اللي هي لست دافع عن عصابات إجرامية لا تعرف الدين مثل عصابات داعش، لكن داعش عند الأفكار هذه حول شراء المنازل. أنا سمعت من كثير من العراقيين وأنا عراقية وأعيش في العراق أنه عصابات وميليشيات مسلحة خارج القانون هي من تهدد الناس وتمنعهم من العودة إلى ديارهم وتخيفهم من أجل شراء منازلهم بأبخس الأثمان. ليست هي فقط الأفكار داعش المخربة، لكن هناك أيضا إرهاب موازي إلى داعش، وهناك فساد هو السبب في عدم تحمل العراقيين ولا سيما المسيحيين. وتوفرت فرصة للمسيحيين بالهجرة والموافقة على هجرتهم أكثر من المسلمين. كانت هذه عامل مهم وأساسي بالنسبة لهم للهجرة، لأن إذا تسألين المسلمين كلهم يتمنون الهجرة. وتحدثت الزميلة السابقة أنه زيادة عدد المهاجرين من المسلمين إلى أوروبا الذين أصبحوا عبء حتى على أوروبا في تقديم الخدمات والمساعدات والضمان إلى آخره. لماذا؟ لأن لم يجدوا الأمان والسلام ولا التنمية في بلدانهم. فالعامل السياسي أيضاً وانفلات السلاح أحد أهم هذه العوامل. أما كثقافة نحن نعيش في أمان، نحب، لأن لا فرق بين مسيحي ويهودي أو صابئي في أفكارنا ولا في ثقافتنا. موجودة بالقرآن الأفكار والنصوص ترجمت وسيست حسب مفهوم ومنهج عصابات داعش والقاعدة. هذا أمر يرفضه الشعب العراقي، ولذلك استقبل البابا حتى المسلمين بالفرح والأهازيج، ودليل على حب الشعب العراقي وتصالحهم فيما بينهم. لكن الأجندات السياسية هي اللي تفرض هذه التفرقة على أبناء الشعب العراقي وتجعلهم غير آمنين، وكل جهة تعمل لصالح جهة. الأكراد كردستان أيضا هناك المسيحيين ما مرتاحين، صحيح اكو تطور إلى حد ما في الخدمات، لكنه أيضا يشعرون بعدم الأمان بسبب التجاذب ما بين حكومة إقليم كردستان وحكومة بغداد حول القضايا المخصصات في الموازنة وتقديم الأموال إلى الإقليم، وكذلك هيمنة الأحزاب الكردية لمصلحتها الخاصة، وإهمال المسيحيين الموجودين في أربيل وفي عنكاو مع أنهم يشكلون نسبة كبيرة. إذن عامل السياسي أتمنى وأرجو من حضراتكم ومنصة دولية ومتطورة وتحاول أن تخدم الإنسانية في كل مكان أن تركز وتسلط الضوء على هذه العوامل، مع الشكر الجزيل لكل ما طرحتموه وما قدمتموه من جهد وبذلتموه من خلال بحوثكم. الشكر الجزيل لكم. شكرا.
Yeah, thank you, Aida. Sura, would you please like to answer?
Thank you, Ms. Aida. Just to clarify, the government officially announced the liberation of ISIS from ISIS, and we have a national day that we celebrate now every year because of that. I forgot which day is that, but it did announce that. But the problem is ISIS is still there in groups, and there's no follow-up or like a strategic approach to make people aware that, okay, ISIS is still there and we are still fighting them, or at least they cannot make such statement because ISIS is still there in small groups. And there is a difference, of course, just to follow up on what you said, between what we actually want as Iraqis and what is on the ground and the political agenda. As I said, I did go in details with the political factors and the influence of Kurdistan region and Baghdad, and how the Christians are caught up in the middle of this, and even all Iraqis. But I did not tackle it all here because, as I said, Saad Sedloum had an excellent paper called Barriers to Return, and on the returning, and he explained the political aspect of it, and I quoted him a lot. So if you would like, you can check that paper. And yeah, I don't debate with you about the corruption, and there are other groups that are the security factor is big in Iraq, and there are other groups that targeting the ownership of other minorities who do not have protection through political parties, or at least security affiliation.
Yeah, thank you. Next question, Nidal Tuma, please.
مساء الخير. صوت مساء الخير. شكرا لكم. كل ما تقدمت به الأخت سورا هو صحيح فعلا وارد، ومشكلة كبيرة هي اللي تعاني منها أهل سهل نينوى وهو التغيير الديموغرافي. أنا من هذه المنطقة، أكو مناطق متنازع عليها. هي ذكرت أكو منطقة الكيف ومنطقة الحمدانية. هذه المناطق سابقا تم بيع قسم من أملاكها هي بإرادتهم هم، يعني بسبب الهجرة وأسباب أخرى، إلى جماعات يعني غير مسيحية. هذه المناطق، فأكو مناطق هذه قسم منها تحرم أو تمنع بيع أملاكهم خارج أهل المنطقة. أنا سؤالي هو، هل يعتبر هذا تطرف إذا أهل المنطقة ما يسمحون يبيعون أملاكهم وأراضيهم إلى خارج أهل هذه المنطقة، بالتحديد هي مثلا منطقة القوش؟ هذا ما شو يعتبروه؟ هو تطرف ديني مثلا، بالإضافة إلى أنه ضغوطات لضم هذه المنطقة إلى إقليم كردستان. أكو محاولات كثيرة. أنا سؤالي، هذا يعتبر تطرف أو المحافظة على مسيحية المنطقة؟ شكرا جزيلا.
Yes, I will reply. Your question was whether it was extremism coming from those minority groups or the groups not selling their land to other groups. I wouldn't call it extremism. I would call it a sort of discrimination and also a coping mechanism. Because for me, it's obvious that those people, the Christian communities, found this area for them to just relax from all the discrimination and the fear as minorities in Iraq, because in Iraq minorities are struggling the most, not to say that majorities are not, but the fact that they needed to have this foreign space among themselves to pursue protection, and this is a sort of coping mechanism for them to maintain the culture, the neighbors, who is controlling what, in order to survive. I wouldn't call, because of pre-existing reasons that happened there. If it wasn't the case, then yes, maybe I would call it extremism if someone just come and decide that no one takes this. But there are pre-existing conditions that make Christians and other communities think this way and react this way.
Yeah, thank you. So next question is from Rehan Khafar.
Thank you, Sura, for your very insightful and informative presentation. For me, I think I might have an argument that the impact of ISIS might be more relevant to the changing of culture, the change of maybe fatwas or so. But I also argue that there might be an impact of the militia regarding the actual policies, because you might agree with me or not. Of course, you are more familiar with the topic. ISIS is no longer exists as a solid community and cannot impact to a significant level the actual policies. We are talking about militia, which influence even the governmental policies. So if we would like to recommend for the forthcoming solution or for forthcoming agenda, I also recommend that we might have a kind of comprehensive strategy for dealing with the changes that happened by ISIS for the culture, and also how can we manage, or how can the Iraqi community manage to deal with the militia and their aggressive and oppressive policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Riham. So this was more of a comment than a question, I think. So I'll just comment on that. Yes, true. ISIS is no longer an organization that has policies in controlling a specific land. But what I say when I say the fear of the unknown and the fact that those people are actually afraid of going back is because history shows us that since the fall of Saddam regime, there were Qaeda and there were other militias and there was ISIS. So everyone in Iraq is saying, okay, what is coming after ISIS? And because of the political situation is unstable, so why would they think that there wouldn't be another group coming and declaring a statehood while they didn't proceed with any sort of protection, full protection from the government? So it's not the fact that that ISIS cannot have policies now, but the fact that there might be another group that can come and do all those policies to threaten those communities. So yeah, as I said, we are working on I'm working on the findings now, and I will consider this point definitely in my recommendation and the policy brief. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Currently, I don't see any other hand. We would have time for 1 or 2 more questions, not more. So if anybody wants to ask a question, please indicate it now. I now see that there's no.
Please.
Yeah. Answer Khan, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salah?
Yes, Dr. Salah.
Go ahead.
شكرا سارة على هذا الطرح. فقط سؤالي ما لم أسمع طرح أو مدينة كركوك. كركوك هي أكثر مدينة عراقية في التنوع، أكثر مدينة تحملت النزوح في أزمة داعش وتعرضت أطرافها إلى داعش. فما سمعت حول مدينة كركوك. هل هناك طرح حول هذه المدينة؟ لا سيما أن كركوك هي تعتبر من أكبر المشاكل في العراق اليوم بقضايا متعددة. هي أكثر مدن العراق تنوعا من الناحية القومية والدينية. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salah. As I said earlier, that our focus of the research is in Nineveh Plain, and I explained why we chose the Christian communities. This doesn't mean that Kirkuk is not a controversial issue, and it has many problems among the governments, not only Iraq and Kurdistan, but also Turkey and other ethnic minorities there. It's just that the research did not tackle the issue in Kirkuk. We focused on Nineveh Plain. So even Mosul was not part of it, which was occupied by ISIS, and even Kirkuk is not part of it, and it's also occupied by ISIS. It was based on the quantitative analysis survey that was done by Malteser in Nineveh Plain. And this is not denying that the issues in Kirkuk are not legit or need a lot of research.
Yeah, thank you. Last contribution this afternoon from Shansa Khan, please. And then we have to close. I'm sorry we are running out of time.
Assalamu alaikum and peace be with you all. Sura, I want to thank you so much for your insightful presentation. My question is, as to what we had discussions regarding all the issues that are faced by the minorities in the Arab world, and I know you mentioned about the different minorities, how do we move forward in regards to addressing all these issues? I know you mentioned also like doing a lot more research, but regarding from the policy makers and also the religious authorities too, like how do we really take this forward and address it in a strategic way? I just want to ask that. So how do we really do the call to action and action on it?
Well, are you asking with regard to Iraq or the Middle East in general? Maybe I missed.
Iraq and Middle East in general.
Well, I'll answer for Iraq at least.
Yes.
For Iraq, I would, my professional experience, I would say separating the political system from religions and treat all Iraqis equally and build the policies based on that. And to do that, Iraq really, really needs to change the constitution to make it more equal and without discrimination. As I said, there is the article that says, okay, the legislation follow the Sharia, and at the same time, it acknowledges the minorities and other religions, 4 of them, while in reality, there are many other religions that still not acknowledged through Iraqi constitution. So now you can, if any Christian wants to be an activist and say against and stay against the government, they can always say, okay, the constitution protect my rights, but what about the others who are not recognized by the constitution? So really, the constitution is the base for everyone to argue, and this base is wrong. For me, it needs to be changed. And of course, this constitution was built after the US, after the fall of Saddam regime, and also it was made by majority, it was approved by majority Muslims who are affiliated, who apply the Sharia of Islam in their actions. So it's not built on the freedom and respect of all Iraqis.
Yeah, thank you for being brief. We can then take in one very last question from Mohammed Hassan Ahmadi. Please also briefly ask your question that we can close in time.
Thank you, Professor Felker. I want to ask Ms. Sura, what is your final solution for prohibiting? Yeah, can you hear me?
Can you repeat, please?
Yeah, what is your final solution for prohibiting immigration from the places belonging to Christian community? Thank you.
There is no final solution, but there is a first step. I think the Pope visit is really important and crucial for Christians to understand that their presence in Iraq is crucial and important, and also for other Iraqis to understand that there are Christian communities around the country that need to be respected. This would be the first step, and I think there's a long way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you. We are at the end of this session. I want to thank all the 3 speakers of this session for their contributions, and all those of you who asked questions, contributed, and or just listened carefully.